you know, building a career in tech or any other industry for that matter requires you to be intentional and focused about the kind of goals you want to get out of that career. And today, we have Kanika joining us, the CEO and founder of Career Rehab LLC. She's also written a book on how to, build that type of career. And today we're going to be diving into the different elements of our career as a product manager, author, coach, and many other things, helping people most especially to break into the tech industry. Welcome to the live stream, Kanika.
No, thank you for having me. Good evening, everybody.
So, one of the first things that I'm always interested in learning, and I say this because technology is not the first career option that jumps at most people who look like us. So why was that a focus for you, or why did you even choose to advocate for people breaking into tech and ServiceNow and things like that?
Because when I first got into tech, I didn't see a lot of people that look like me. So, I've been in the industry for 19 years. So I've kind of seen a lot of things and I've shed a lot of tears. I've had a lot of career heartbreaks. So for me, helping people break into tech, or I should say transition into tech, is really about helping them like navigate those challenges and learning from others like myself to kind of like help them not have to go through those career heartbreaks that I experienced, because I didn't really have anybody to really hold my hand, provide me guidance. I didn't have like mentors earlier in my career. So it was very difficult. I mean, it was a very difficult journey in the first, 5 to 10 years, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So that's why I do the things that I do for the folks on social media and for my clients.
Well, thank you for all the amazing work that you do. I think I was just saying that to you right before we joined. So you talk about not having that help when you got started. Can you talk me a little bit through that? What did that look like for you, and why did you even get interested in tech in the first place?
I was just fascinated with the internet, like growing up, being a young girl, just like, I kind of grew up, just being on the internet, surfing the internet, being exposed to doing web development at an early age, building websites, really getting excited about e-commerce. At the time, that's when like eBay and Amazon and some of those sites that came out. So I was just really excited about like, wow, like anything that I want to know about, I can actually search on the internet and I can read up on it. So that's kind of like when I went to college and I decided to major in computer technology, and I started to focus in on having a specialization in internet technology. And that's when I started to really like advance my knowledge in web development technologies. So, dealing with HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and just really being excited about using open source tools, and leveraging my knowledge from that. So that's kind of like how I got started. It's really because I just like the internet. I just love what the internet was doing at that time when I was young.
And do you still feel the same way about it?
I actually enjoy it. I mean, as you know, I'm always on social media, so I love the internet because it's so much to learn and it's so many great people that you can connect with. I enjoy the marketing aspect of it a lot because I feel like social media has provided us so much wealth of information. Some of that information is good, some of that information is bad, but I think the evolution of bringing marketing, communications, and media into the internet is the part that I really enjoy the most. LinkedIn is one of my favorite networking sites, and then Twitter second. So, I just really enjoyed like being a sponge of information. So I'm constantly reading articles and watching videos on YouTube and listening to podcasts. So the internet is exciting, but it's also it's a scary place too, right? It's not always glitter and glam. It's not always the coolest place to be when you have certain topics that are circulating around the internet. So I think it's a gift and a curse.
I guess just like the real world then, right? Because again, in the world, it's like good people, not so good people, really great situations, not so great situations. But I think I really like what you said, right? Because it's a multiplier, right? Like, the scale of the impact that you can have. I was just talking to you about, all the spaces that you used to host during the pandemic just to
Yeah,
evangelize tech, tell people about the opportunity. And it really made a big impact, right? I was telling you
yeah.
about, even people that I didn't know, like it was, oh, I follow her. She's amazing. She's great. And I think that's just what's possible, right? On the positive side of the spectrum, as you were mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic was like where I felt like I found my true authentic voice online because I just had published my book Career Rehab, and that came out at the beginning of the pandemic, and then everything was shut down. So my book came out January 2020, and then we went into the pandemic, and I was like, how am I going to market this book? And I really wasn't sure because I had got a book deal with Entrepreneur Media, and I feel like the Twitter spaces is where I found and developed like a really sense of community. And that's the biggest thing that I love about social media is that you can build community and you can have your level of impact or influence. But I just think being authentic and having some level of integrity is like the most important part of it. Like it's not really about you building your platform. It's about, are you helping people, and is your content and is your voice authentic?
Hmm. That is really key, and that's very powerful. So, if we go back to that very beginning, can you tell me a little bit about your first job in tech? What were you doing specifically in that first role, and how did you get it?
Okay, yeah. So my first role in tech, specifically, was I was a working for the Department of Labor as a SaaS developer. So I worked as a SaaS developer for the Consumer Price Index. That basically is an organization that calculates data on a monthly basis based upon the pricing of goods and services and food and this is the different things in the US that we calculate when it comes to, different consumer like consumers buy things. So like it calculates the aggregated data. So that was my very first job in tech as a SaaS and .NET developer. I stayed in that role for 2.5 years, and then I moved on and I found my passion for project management. So I would say that I did like development for like 2 to 3 years. I did a lot of like um .NET development, developing custom apps, and then I also did SaaS development, developing like data reports that we use every month for the data that reports to the United States of the consumer goods and services. So that was my very first role out of college, and it was actually a really good job. Like I liked that job, and I liked the people that I was working with.
And how did you? What was the? How did you land that first role? Because I think it's always the reason why we typically ask it is because many of the people who watch this podcast, they're mostly often people who are transitioning into tech. And like, of course you've heard it yourself, right? All of this fancy stories about do this like for 2 weeks and just get a job, and like, and people run up against the reality that's not that. So it's always great to kind of like hear real stories of like what that process looked like for
Yeah.
guests on this.
That process was I graduated from college. I have a college degree in computer technology. I saw a job posting online. I applied to the job, and I submitted my resume. And it was an entry level developer role at the time. I didn't have any previous SaaS development experience. But what I did, I highlighted the experience that I had from college, where I was taking programming classes like C++, JavaScript, and other programming languages like PHP, and all of the web technology languages like HTML and JavaScript and CSS. So what I did was I just highlighted those courses and those projects on my resume. And then from there, I got the job interview. It was like during the Christmas holidays. I got the job interview. I went downtown to the Department of Labor, and I interviewed, and they offered me the job. And then they trained me in the programming languages that I wasn't knowledgeable about, like SAS, because SAS is a statistical programming language, which I didn't have a lot of experience in that. But they were looking to train up entry level technology professionals who, were coming out of school or coming out of boot camp programs. So that's how I got my job. I would say it was a lot easier back then to get a job like that way than it is today in this current job market. But I would still think that the bulk of that still applies, right? You still got to have a solid resume, solid GPA, solid interview skills, and things like that. So,
And I think one of the things that I like that you really highlight is the value of still showing something, right? Even though you didn't have this specific skill set, I imagine that the interviewers must have still seen something in you to one, show that you're able to learn and ramp up quickly to be able to do the job. So,
yeah.
how would you advise someone who may be in that same situation? Maybe they don't have the exact industry experience or maybe even the coding skills, but are still looking to roles. How should they approach interviewing and potentially getting those roles?
I mean, that's a really good question because I think in this job market, I think that you're not going to be able to check all of the boxes on a job posting. You may only have 4 out of the 10 skills, right? But shouldn't discourage you from applying to the role. So I think that you should definitely be intentional about making sure there is some alignment between your resume and the job posting. But I think it's also important for you to show that you are self-assertive and you have the hustle and the grit to kind of learn those things. And I think you need to be honest in your job interviews. You need to talk about your strengths and talk about the things you have built, talk about the things that you have created, talk about the programming languages that you have been exposed to or the other technologies that you have been exposed to, and try to tie in the things that you've already accomplished, whether in your coursework or in a previous role. Try to tie that into what they may be looking for in that job description. That's why reading job descriptions is so important. There are going to be a couple bullets there where you don't have the experience, but you want to go into the job interview leaning into your strengths and talking more about what you're strong in, and also letting them know that you are able to learn and you are coachable and you can pick up on different technologies. And I like to go and look at the mission statements on the company's websites, because if I can provide some level of human connection with that, that's going to seal the deal with the interview, because they're going to know that I'm not just here for a job. I'm also here to provide a service that's associated with their mission and their goals.
That's a major key right there. That's some major key because I think there's so many, and that's one of the things that I like, about the guests who come here to share generously because these are the nuances, the little nuances that separates okay candidates from good candidates and good candidates from great candidates.
Yep.
Because even if it's not verbatim, understanding what a company cares about and finding ways to bring that resonance in your responses, I think is very, very key in driving you forward. It's almost like when you hear like, a great song, it might be like the beat that's great or, the lyrics or something else.
Right.
But when all of that comes together, it's just a great song. And I think the same way happens even in interviews. Interviewers may not be able to say specifically, this is why I like this candidate so much. But all it takes is that you've prepared, one, you bring the technical skills, but also when you tie all of that to your experience and skills building stuff, and then even to like the company's mission,
Yep.
it's just going to be like, wow, we love this candidate, but it's taking all of that preparation and insight to actually deliver that. So thank you, Kanika, for that. That was really
I
amazing.
appreciate that. I mean, that's super important. Like they're there to hire you to do a job for the business, and you have to be able to connect that. And then I think asking great questions is a great way to stand out. Don't ask just the standard questions.
And that's one of the things that that's a great point that you bring up because I think one of the things that shows is like, of course, that the things that you care about. And so from that perspective, what are some ideas of great questions that you think a candidate can ask to really show something extra to the interviewer?
I think the first thing is you can do your research on any announcements or press releases, or if the company has any new products or services that they're offering, if they did a joint venture with another company and they're offering a third party tool or integration with the technologies that they have. Find something that is recent within the last couple of months that they've announced that they're doing, and bring in questions about that, because that's going to let them know that you are not just reading the about page, you're going beyond the about page and you're reading things that are associated with their products and services. And ask something about, where do they see this new announcement or this new product or this new service going, or if you have knowledge about that technology, ask a question specifically around that. Another good question is to always be intentional about asking questions about, you know, um, what does a typical day look like for you as if you get hired for this role, and what's expected of you. I think we a lot of times we ask questions that are beneficial to them, but we should be also asking questions that's beneficial to us so we can make a clear decision on whether we want to be a part of that organization. So what does a typical day look like for me as a developer here within this organization? What type of responsibilities will you be expected of me in order to be able to perform well within this role? That will let you know if you feel like you're a good fit. It also lets you know a little bit kind of like about the company culture, depending on like what their responses is. If you got to work extra hours, you may not want to work extra hours in the evenings, or if there's things that you think that you just know you don't want to do, or you can do but you don't want to do anymore. It lets people know like what they want to make a decision on if they get that job offer. So it's a two-way street. And I'm always intentional about asking questions about diversity and equity and things like that, but I try to stay away from things that are really really focused around money until we get to the negotiation phase.
Yeah, that's also very important. It's interesting that you say that because I remember, one of the roles for one of the fan companies I was interviewing for, that was actually a thing. The recruiter actually sent me, specific articles from their tech blog about
Yep.
some of the tech stack just to prepare me better for the conversation about some of the new things they've implemented, and just like, getting me closer to like, so that when we have a conversation, it's actually very productive. But just like you said, in the cases where you're not getting that direct guidance, I think it will put you way above and beyond when you've done that research and you can actually start to speak to some of those things.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that you had talked about earlier was like transitioning from, a developer role to project management. And I know that now you're in product management. Can you talk me through a little bit about that, that journey?
Yeah. So I'm gonna be honest, I didn't want to be a developer long term. I'm not, that's not my ministry, being a developer. And I think that development is great exposure to going through any software development lifecycle, right? I think that it gives you a lot of experience. I developed for 3 years, and it really gave me a lot of exposure to gathering requirements, writing out my requirements and then coding up against them and then doing testing and then deploying code and things like that. So I think that experience is invaluable. I think everybody should at least be exposed to development for a period of time, whether it's a long period of time or a short period of time. But I'm a natural born leader. So being in project management was like, I could just manage the folks that's coding because I know what was expected of them to do because I've done it for a couple of years, and I'm very organized. I'm very outspoken. I have a good a relationship with various different types of stakeholders and end users and leadership and then the development team. I love to talk. I love to help people and grow people. So project management was just a natural transition. So after I did that development role for a couple of years, I moved into project management, and I was doing waterfall methodology at the time, and I really enjoyed that. But I think that I really really got my spark when the industry went to agile methodology and the scrum framework. I got extremely fascinated with that 10 years ago. I got my Scrum Master certification, and I was just like, wow, like this agile stuff is like we can ship stuff in 2 weeks. We can do a sprint between 1 to 4 weeks. This is so forward thinking. This is how we're going to scale products and applications at a fast pace. So that's when I got extremely passionate about 10 years ago about Scrum and Agile. And I got my Scrum Master certification. And once I got that certification, I think I did like close to maybe a $35,000 pay increase. And I just kept reading Agile books and taking courses and taking reading more about Scrum and how to manage the Scrum team. And from there I just fell in love with it.
And that's very interesting, right? Because I think one of the things that you talk about there is the upskilling piece, right? Like going from waterfall, embracing the change in agile, actually flourishing, in that space, and also getting certified and getting your money up, which is beautiful, So I like that you say that, but can you break it down a little bit more, just so that people understand? Because I think one of the elements of tech is that the learning doesn't stop. You have to continue growing to reach your full potential, and also, even most importantly, not to get left behind. So, can you double click on that a little bit, just so people really understand why that's important?
Oh, why continuous learning is important?
Yep.
Okay, sure. So, continuous learning is so important. The more you learn, the more you earn. It's really
Mm.
impossible within tech to really get to a place where you're not constantly learning. Even almost 20 years into this game, I'm still constantly learning. I may not look like I've been in the game 20 years, but I have. But I think that for me, um, as I've transitioned from project management to wanting to learn product management, it's so important for me to constantly read books, constantly read articles. I constantly take courses, whether that's LinkedIn courses on Udemy.com, or whether me just jumping on the most challenging project. I think what I try to do, this is just my methodology of being a continuous learner, is that I pay close attention to the tech forecasting trends, and I try to always see where tech is going. I don't want to just stay where I'm currently at, right? So I want to make sure that I know exactly where is tech going, and what are the things I need to learn and adopt, so I can stay in this industry for at least 10 more years if I decide to, right? So I read articles about the tech industry on a regular basis. I read job descriptions daily. I pay attention to reading LinkedIn posts from people that are extremely smarter than me, who have more knowledge than me, who are in the roles that I desire to be in. And then I always ask to be on the most challenging development projects, even as a project manager, because I'm more of a hybrid product manager. I am partially technical and partially project management oriented. So I'm very intentional about learning the platforms and the technologies at a beginner to intermediate level, so I can manage the team. So that's constantly spending 30 minutes a day learning something new about my job so I can better do my job.
That is so fire. And it's interesting because, like, today, as part of like my development, I'm part of this like group where we're constantly talking about our goals. And that's definitely one of the things that I had there is like to get better just technically, because I almost did the reverse. I come from like a product project role, but I'm doing more technical stuff, not necessarily coding, but just working in platforms and things like that.
Okay.
So like I'm also like just trying to learn as much as I can. And I think it's interesting now because like, technology is going like really deep. And I think even for everyone in tech, it's
Yeah.
so important to have at least some technical understanding, even if you're in a non-technical role. So yeah,
Well, I
I
totally
definitely.
agree with that. I think the best project managers and product managers and non-technical folks are the folks that do a deeper dive that goes beyond their job description, because they will have better career success and they will be able to interact with stakeholders and end users and customers on a deeper level. Specializing, it helps you to have some level of utilization in this industry. It's a tough market out there. So you can't just be a generalist. You have to be a specialist in something in order to stand out.
Mm. Yeah, I completely agree, and that's actually one of the reasons why. So, when I started to see the trend with AI, generative AI, that's why I wanted to be in a data role, right? That was such a big thing
Yeah.
for me because I know that it's data that powers, Gen AI. So it's like, how do I learn more about like data platforms and like, just the data that drives, everything. And if you think about technology, just like you were saying, like data drives everything, right? You type in a website, uh, you know, the internet protocol is making a call and displaying the page to you. That's basically data that somebody stored somewhere that's coming back to you, right? So even just having like base understanding of things like that, I think it's so fascinating. And that's why I can recommend it enough for almost anyone in tech to just get a base cloud certification, because I think at the very minimum that always sets like that base understanding. If you want to get other things, whether it's security plus or all these other ones, I think those could also be very helpful. But just understanding, because almost everything is built on cloud these days, right? So
Yeah.
understanding that, I think, could be very, very, very key.
No, I agree with you. That's a great point.
So I hope you're enjoying the stream. Kanika's been here, dropping a lot of knowledge, a lot of gems. We're still gonna be here for, I think, about the next 30 minutes, and then you're gonna have a lot of time to ask questions about building your career, product management, God tech. I know that that's a very exciting and interesting subject these days, and then the whole nine. So pivoting a little bit, ServiceNow, I'm not sure if you have a partnership with them, but I know like that was something
I
that
don't. I
you
don't.
evangelized
I
for a long time. And I wanted to understand, I know it's some like enterprise level software, but I've never really interacted with it. So I'm actually also curious to know what it is, what it does, how it works, and like potentially maybe even like what are the different ways that someone could get into it.
Yeah, so I don't have a partnership with ServiceNow. I've been working in the ServiceNow ecosystem probably about 5 or 6 years, since 2019. So ServiceNow is a low-code platform. It's a platform that basically develops applications. A lot of these applications are internal applications to specific organizations, and work in GovTech. So we use ServiceNow for various different types of applications. I'll just give an example of one type of way that ServiceNow is being used in a lot of organizations. Um, when you have an IT service desk and someone calls into the service desk and they put a ticket in because their computer isn't working, maybe they're putting in a ticket because they need access to software, or they're requesting access to a phone or a server or a printer. Um, ServiceNow actually has this thing called ITSM, which stands for IT Service Management. So that's the module within ServiceNow that helps you build a successful IT service desk that gives the end user the ability to submit tickets. The ticket goes through a process where it gets handed off to an agent, IT service desk agent. That particular person is the person that's going to help the end user resolve their incident or their issue with their phone or their computer. Or maybe that ticket will go to another IT service agent who will make sure that you get that phone or that computer, or you get that new um, printer in your office because you're making a request for something. So you're requesting software or hardware, or you're calling in to fix a specific issue. Excuse me. So ServiceNow does plenty of things. They have other different modules that do security operations for security incidents. You can develop applications for that. Vulnerability response. It does governance risk compliance. So they have a lot of modules that you can create and build low-code platform apps where they can actually do these things and help these organizations succeed.
That's so interesting because when I think about it, I think it was episode 4 or 5. I had an SAP consultant, on the podcast, and I wonder, like, how similar or different is that? Because I know that that's also like an enterprise software that has multiple different like modules that kind of like do like different enterprise things. So is it similar to that?
Very much similar. So ServiceNow has various different modules that are specific for they're there for different needs. So one of my projects I worked in the past where we were developing a security incident app that tracks and helps this organization make sure that there's no security incidents that happens. So if there's a potential threat to their system, their network, it tracks security incidents for SOC analysts. SOC analysts work 24 by 7. They have 3 shifts. They have to track security incidents. So there's a slew of modules that this platform does. It has a module that I'm maybe working on in the future that's focused around building HR service delivery applications. It helps build HR apps to manage personnel information and data for an organization. You can build a whole portal that can have workflows that can have an organization's all of their employees' informations. Managers can be able to track the performance of an employee, all of their personnel and data is in there when they're hired, their salary, just everything. So it's so many different modules that do so many great things. It's just like right now, ServiceNow is just one of the more popular enterprise platforms that people are using right now. Will it be around forever? I don't know, but it's popular today. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And so to the opportunity aspect of it, right? I know that I think they were offering trainings at some point to kind of like onboard more people into the system and like get them equipped,
Yeah,
maybe
during the
potentially to do.
pandemic, that's basically how I got introduced to work on a project in the beginning of the pandemic. So I was learning it. I kind of was thrown into a project. They was short of a project manager. They needed me to come in and we were migrating our IT service desk from Remedy to ServiceNow. Remedy is a old ticketing system that people use for managing their IT service desk systems. And that was my very first project. So we had to move all of the hardware and software, all the tickets from the old system. But yeah, I mean, they have free training program. They have a program called the Next Gen program. And if someone wants to get into that program, they can go directly through ServiceNow and get training. And they have it's another program called Tech Bridge. But yes, right now it's a low hanging fruit if you want to transition. Like it's easy to get in because you don't have to be an extensive. You have to decode, but you don't have to be a lot of the things you can use out of the box, and you don't have to code everything from scratch.
And what do you like? Is it something that has a lot of opportunity, or is it limited in just like its application, or not necessarily application, but the roles, right? Because if I think about like uh, AWS, for example, right, you could become a cloud project manager, you could become a solution architect, you could become a cloud engineer. Like there's so many different pathways within that cloud space. Is it something similar to that too, where like you
Yes.
could.
So I mean, it's built off of developing core software development teams. So you need a business analyst. You can be a ServiceNow business analyst. You can be a ServiceNow quality assurance tester. You're going to take those requirements and build test cases from the BA. You can be a ServiceNow project manager. You can be a ServiceNow developer. You can be an entry level developer, mid level, or lead developer. You can be a ServiceNow architect where you completely manage the platform. You know the platform. You need a lot of experience to be a ServiceNow architect because you need access and understanding of all those various different modules. Of course, you can be a system administrator where you administer groups and users and policies and things like that. So there's various different roles. You can be a consultant. You can be a knowledge manager where you write nothing but knowledge articles for the platform because the platform has a very strong knowledge base. You can be a service catalog manager. You can be an ITSM manager. There's various different types of roles, but what I try to encourage people is become an expert at one of the modules, one or two modules, and then you will be able to expand your reach with job opportunities because when you're niche down in a specific module, it provides job opportunity because organizations sometimes they only may be working on building one or two of those modules at that moment, and they may need that access of professionals who have that expertise and knowledge.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's very, very, very important. So, in terms of like certifications, I know like those are things that people are always talking about. It used to be popular like 2 years ago. I don't think they get as much love as they used to. But what are your takes on certifications?
Hmm. Why do you think they don't get as much love?
I think that just in the way that people, I think just with everything, like too much of everything can be bad, right? I think people went too hard on one side of like, oh, just get a certification and you're going to be fine, right? But I think people are not looking for people who just have like paper knowledge. Like there's a bit of that experience. And I think that's where like, it's not as important anymore. Like even some cases, like of course it does help, like certification actually did help me get my current role, but I think if you can show, for example, that you have the knowledge, you may not necessarily need the paper to prove it. And I think that's kind of like where the backlash is coming in a little bit, because there are people who have done like 4, 5, 6 certifications and still can't get the job, because when they get to the, first of all, like even in the resume, like it's not saying that you've done any projects. It's not saying that you've
Right.
actually used this knowledge in a specific role. So the promise and the reality are not aligning, and I think that's where that backlash is coming from.
Oh, okay. I got you. I got you. So I would agree with you that I think that you do need the core competencies and understanding the frameworks of these different various technologies, or I would say tech domains. So let's just take cloud computing, for instance. Um, the certifications help you learn and understand cloud computing and the various different services that you would need to build upon on AWS, whether that's RDS, S3, the various different popular services that you would need, right? And truly understanding what cloud computing is and what virtualization is, that is important. But building an actual project in the AWS environment is just as important or more important, maybe probably, than the certification. I do believe that certifications, projects, and the ability to explain what you know on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile and within a job interview is definitely going to help you stand out. I don't think certifications alone are the end all be all to landing a job. I think certifying your ability to explain, write well, um, be able to communicate your knowledge is just as important, because once we I think certifications show that you can obtain knowledge and pass an exam, or you could cram and digest knowledge but don't actually comprehensively understand what you actually are uh, memorizing, right? So I think that it can be looked at two different ways, but a person that's being intentional, they should be saying, I actually understand why I'm doing what I'm doing and why the answer is A and why the answer is not B, because I can explain that the answer is A because of XYZ, right? So I think that certifications still get love. I think it's the way that you show the love to the certification based upon projects, explaining, developing content, blogs, videos. I think that's what's going to help you land an opportunity is being passionate about why you do what you do.
And I completely agree with that 1,000%. Interestingly, like I think even in my case, when I went through my interview, some of the things that so I had built, and I think this answer is actually going to capture everything that you said, right? So I'd done a startup where we were building like the entire service, which was a mobile CRM on AWS. So my actual experience was AWS. But my certification was in Google Cloud, the Google Cloud Digital Leader. So I did have some knowledge, but the knowledge wasn't as comprehensive as my project knowledge because I knew, like, for example, when we wanted a service for people to be able to send uh, SMSs with images, but we knew
Mhm.
like they couldn't send the images directly. So we hosted the images on S3 so they would send a link, but then we use a service that would natively display those images in those text messages just so that you wouldn't have to click it because then it would degrade the experience a little bit.
Right.
So even being able to just talk through that one use case of how we use a cloud service to host images, and then
Yep.
talking about, like our data warehouse, or our relational databases and how we stored,
Right.
customer information and things like that. While I didn't have like specific Google knowledge because I don't work there, I think I was still able to convince, my leader, like, hey, this guy has some foundational knowledge and he can help. And I think if I think back, two things, just like you rightly said. One of them is like find ways, even if it's not very deep. After you've learned these things, can you get with a group of friends or other people who are in the journey to actually try to do something? Because I don't think it matters much whether like that experience is like at a big company or something that you did over the weekend with some friends. The fact that you can speak to the knowledge in a way that's not just textbook or classroom, I think that helps,
Yes.
right? And then the second part of it is I think a level one should be when you learn a concept or you learn an idea, there's millions of videos on YouTube, I think, because oftentimes you're only going to get like, step one, step two, step three in the learning. If you think something is important, can you watch another 5-minute video just about that topic alone? Because that can break that knowledge down to where like, it's not just something you ticked off in this course, but something that you now understand better, maybe because someone explained it in a different way that now makes
Yeah.
you understand, why does a database work this way? How do you ingest data into this database? How does it get processed? Where is it stored?
Right.
Because I think once you have that level of knowledge, when you get asked that second layer question in an interview, you don't go, wait, what do you mean?
I totally agree. I totally agree with you. I think people have to go beyond understanding terminology and definitions. That's the foundation, right? Like that's the foundation. So AWS I think it's the practitioner exam. I think that gives you the knowledge of really the foundation of their major services and what is the cloud and how does AWS architect their specific services. But you got to be job interviews are scenario based, and they're looking for you to take that knowledge and to help them provide a solution. So if you can't take the frameworks and the technologies and be able to describe how would you solution something, it makes you look like you only memorized book knowledge. You have no way to think on your own of how would I put these things together. Why would I use S3 for storage, for SMS data? Why would I use RDS for this particular service? Like you need to be intentional about understanding that they're going to be giving you a project with requirements, and you have to pull from that knowledge and decide what's the best solution for the organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you answered that perfectly. And I think we have our first question from Rian. So the question is, do you prefer working in the public or private sector?
That's a good question because I worked in so my if you anybody looks at my LinkedIn profile, I have worked for the federal government, but I have worked for private sector organizations. But my customers and my clients were still federal government agencies, so it technically was still like working for private sector, but my customers were still public sector, if that makes sense. So I've worked for like Deloitte, and still I was still serving government agencies as my clients. So I would say that it's kind of like I still was kind of like one foot in public sector, but working for a private sector company. So majority of my career has kind of been in GovTech because GovTech is broken into being a direct federal employee and then being a federal government contractor. And I think that people don't know there's a distinction where the federal government contractor works for a private sector company and the federal government employee works directly for a federal agency. And I've been on both sides. So I would say work life balance is a lot better working for the government, working for public sector. Private sector is, I feel like you learn at a fast pace. You can make a lot of money, but you may not always have the work life balance. But I've been on contracts where the work life balance was just as normal as being a federal government employee. I don't think that it really bothers me on either side. I think it depends on where you are personally within your life and what are your career goals. When I was working in private sector, I was like, you know, excited to be innovative, excited to learn, excited to make more money. But I also feel like I can do those things in the government as well because I'm intentional about always showing up and bringing a lot of extremely new ideas and solutions no matter where I'm at. So I would say where I'm at right now in my life, public. If I was younger, private.
I think that's a really great way to break it down. And like something that I'd maybe like a bit of more insight into because I've also been both a contractor and a full-time employee, and I'm just curious what that looks like, in GovTech.
Um, sorry, I was reading the questions on the side. What was you saying again?
So I was asking, like, I've also been a contractor, so I was wondering, like, what does it look like to be like a full-time federal government employee
Oh,
versus like being a contractor?
contractors, they work for us. They come in and provide a service. They hire to work on a project. So if I'm working with ServiceNow, federal government contractors, they're hired to come in to do projects. As a senior product manager on the federal government side, my job is really to be intentional about leading the project and leading the mission and ensuring that the government contractors are doing their job. um, I say working in the federal government is very it's it's a serious thing. I think people look at it like it's only about this job security, but it's like you really have to get intentional with knowing about the mission of your federal government agency or department because the work that we do is extremely important to this country. And I think that you have to align your passions and your technologies and the things that you know and align that with the federal agency that do something that is amazing, right? Whether that's transportation, whether that's defense, whether that's agriculture, there's a lot of different agencies and they all have a specific unique role for how we run this country, right? And I think, that's the important thing. But I think it's definitely job security and it's definitely an opportunity for you to serve. I think that's the missing piece that people think it's all about the employee getting a good, cushy, nice little comfortable job. No, you're serving taxpayers. You're building services and products and systems to help them be able to operate in this country.
It's a big responsibility when you put it that way. So, what does as a product manager in golf tech, what does salary progression look like? Uh, so from like when someone is coming in newly, as to kind of like progress mid level, and like when they become like really senior.
Yeah, I mean, most senior people in GovTech, they make six figures. They make into the mid six figures to upper six figures. I think it depends on the grade and the level. Um, there is a lot of career growth in the space because there is an opportunity for us to continue to innovate. Like we are constantly trying to innovate with different things. Like right now, artificial intelligence is something that we're working on incorporating in the future. You know, cybersecurity is extremely important. So when you have skill sets like data, cyber, um, cloud computing, um, AI, machine learning, those are just some of the more cutting edge technologies that they're always looking for people who have those skill sets because that is the now. I won't even say it's the future. We have to stop talking about these technologies like cloud and AI as if it's like it's coming. Like, no, we're doing it now. We're using it now. Like our systems are in the cloud now. Like, so that's why I want people to be intentional about focusing on skilling up for the things that are in the present. Because if you're not focused on the present, it's constantly kind of like you maybe getting left behind. You know what I mean? Because it's today we're doing machine learning. It's today we're doing AI. So that's kind of how I look at it. I look at it like you gotta catch up. You already getting left behind yesterday.
That is so crucial. And we have another question from Trey. I'm not sure that I'm reading this right, but it says, "What are some tips to negotiate your salary after you secure the job?"
You must be saying after the job offer has been given, because you can't
Mm.
negotiate after the secured is accept. Okay, um, yeah, I guess he's just after the job offer has been offered
Yeah.
to the employee. Um, all right, so this is how I negotiate. Number one, I always try to make sure that before I even go into a job interview, I'm asking the recruiter, what is the salary potential? What is the salary? I don't even waste my time going on job interviews that don't align with my salary expectations. Because that saves you time on going on like a bunch of job interviews that you don't need to go on. Because then you get to the end, you're like, I didn't know this job was only 85,000, but I actually wanted 150. Why did I waste my time going on this job interview? And I know that I wanted 50, $60,000 more. So number one is always ask the recruiter, what is the salary expectations for this role? What is the max salary that they're looking to pay for this role? That will save you time and energy on even giving that job all that time. Number two is I use salary.com, I use glassdoor.com, and I align my number of years of experience with the median to high range salary, to the higher side salary because of the number of years of experience that I have. Number two, I always make sure that I am writing down, the job is friends with benefits. So I'm thinking about all the different benefits that I want out of that job offer. And if I have two job offers on the table, I create a list of what company A is giving me and what company B is giving me. And I make a list of all of the healthcare benefits, the paid time off, the 401k matching, the perks, the training. And I just kind of look at all of that, and if company A seems like I really want to take that job, but they're not meeting me halfway with some of these things, I counter offer with what company B may be giving me that I really want. If company B is giving me all of the things that I really desire, then I go back and say, hey, I'm actively looking to have, you know, competing job offers. Do you think that you guys would be willing to offer me this salary with these additional benefits that I want? And the last thing is what I do is I try to be realistic with myself, and I really ask myself, do I got the job skills for me to be asking for this large amount of money. Because if I don't, I'm okay with saying that I'm willing to grow. I'm willing to take this job, and I'm willing to like see what I can get out of it. And then the next job I'll go for the higher salary, right? Sometimes we are expecting 200,000 and our resume don't even speak to 200,000. You know what I mean? Like we got to be like real with ourselves. Like does do my if my skill sets are worth that, then I should be
I thank you so much, Kanika. I think you bring a lot of reality to this conversation. One of the things that you said that's so important, and like, I'm not even going to be shameful about it. Like, in my current role, I try to negotiate. The recruiter didn't budge. I'm like, let's do it. Because the reason for me was so simple. Like that thing I talked about, this was where I wanted to be. And I know that I might get another opportunity, I might get another offer, but is it going to be in the cloud and data like I want it to be? And that's the thing. It's like, one, what do you want out of a job? Sometimes it's not just the extra money or this and that. Is there a skill that you can gain in this role that sets you up for your next role or your next two
yes.
roles? Even where are you right now? If you're just laid off and you are making, let's say, even 100K more, do you want to wait, or do you want to take this job now to be in the mix again? I don't think anybody can answer that question for you, right? But you have to be honest about where you are. And then are there skill gaps that you don't have that this role could offer? I think there
Yes.
needs to be that holistic view, because oftentimes people will say, oh, you can always get more or this or that. But if the pool they offer, or maybe there was another candidate who was neck and neck with you, but you were number one, would you be okay if they went with them? And I think those are the little nuances that you can make those decisions off of. I want to negotiate or get more, or even walk away without necessarily thinking about that holistic picture.
I love that so much what you just said, because I want to tell you that having the opportunity to work on something cutting edge that you don't have any knowledge on, if you stay there for 12 to 24 months, you'll be able to get the ideal salary that you want, because you'll be able to put it on your resume. So I feel like sometimes we have to grow where we're planted. Number one, sometimes we have to be intentional about saying, you know what, I'm going to be like Dwayne Wade. I'm going to, go on this other team, then come back and get the championship later, because I need to grow in this other area. I need to prove that I am a champion, and then come back to my city or town. And, that's what he did with when he was, I think it was the Miami Heat. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think that, be intentional about not lowballing yourself, but also look at the city and state that you live in. Look at where your demographic of where you live in. Also incorporate, are you going to be hybrid or versus remote? Because you may be saving more money by not going into the office every day, because you're saving with gas and food and a cleaner's bill and clothes. So there's so many different things, but if you're transitioning into tech, it's okay to take something that is not six figures initially, get that experience and be way more confident and go for something else later. But if you get six figures out the gate, congratulations to you too. I'm not knocking that as well.
And it's so interesting. So I have a friend who was transitioning from a more engineering background into sales engineering. And he felt like he'd been lowballed in his last role. 3% increases was his first college job, stayed there for like 5 years, which was already a mistake in the first place, and was just growing like 3%. So when he went back in the market to get this job, he was hungry and passionate. It's like, I want to like almost triple my salary even if I could. And the hiring manager saw his passion, like this guy could learn, he could do this. And then they got stuck on the salary, right? Because he was so fixated. And I said something to him. I'm like, If this person was actually saying something to him, is like, I really like you, I like your energy, I like your vision, I like your passion, come work for me, right? That was the idea. And I literally, I felt like I was a tiebreaker. So I said, you know what? I feel like if you take this role, you're gonna write your own salary next time. He only spent 10 months in that role. In fact, a couple months later, when we were talking about it, it's like, I went into that interview, I was so excited, I was saying all those things. I'm almost cringing when I think back to like all the responses I was giving, right? Because now that I'm in role and learning all these different things, I'm like, wow, this was how much I didn't know. And that's the thing. It's like, but he spent 10 months in that role, literally almost doubled his salary again in the next role because of
Short,
just how
short,
much I'd learned.
yeah, it's short-term sacrifice for long-term gain, right? So I'm in a role right now where um I'm been exposed to building virtual agents and working with natural language understanding. And, I want to work more on, AI search. And I want to get exposed to doing more product management types of responsibilities. Knowing what I know about product management salaries, I need to right now be a student. I'm not a master. I'm not a teacher right now, right? I need to be intentional about building those relationships, but also building up my knowledge. So when I do want to ask for double my salary, I can feel confident in my ability to execute when I get those new if I want a new role.
And I really like that. And it's like, saying that is something that resonates because you're clearly a leader, you were a teacher, right? So it's one of those beautiful things that I like. It's that I'm in school right now, right? So I have to stop being, a almost an influencer, like teaching people how to get into tech. Now I'm learning how to be an MBA person, right? And that's the beauty of it. It's like this world's mix, right? You learn and then you give back to other people, right? And it's such a beautiful thing. Because that's actually in those spaces where growth is happening both ways, right? Because when you're teaching, you're getting a better understanding of even the things that you know. But when you're learning, it's with all humility, like putting aside everything you know just to be able to receive those new things. And I think it's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, man. I was telling people on Twitter recently that I love connecting with people that are smarter than me. I don't want anyone to ever think that because my level of influence or the number of followers, or I'm not even an influencer, but um people probably think I am, but I'm not. But I love learning from people who are, I have coaches, I have mentors, I have people on LinkedIn that are my virtual mentor, and they have no clue that they're my virtual mentor because I love their content. I love their LinkedIn profile. I love their post. So you can't always be a teacher. You have to learn how to be in this audience. I want to be in the audience more in 2025. I want to be more in the student seat of product leadership.
And it's so amazing that you say that because there's a man, I think his name is Treyers. They had this product um uh leadership summit, so to speak. It was a bunch of like folks at Netflix and San Fran. I think it was last Thursday. And I told my friend, I'm like, if y'all have a rerun of this event, you best believe I'm gonna be here. Like, it's just to what you said. Like, I want to go zip and
Yes.
say nothing and just listen
And
because I
that's what
think
I'm doing. I'm building a strategy around going to product related events in 2025, meetups, conferences, trainings, and also just becoming a student and listening to a lot of product based podcast shows. So I just think right now, like, if I ever wanted to make a transition to some of those companies that you named, I'm not ready. If I had to be honest with myself, I know that I'm not ready because I've been a project manager longer than I've been a product manager. So I don't think that I'm ready, but I think that I want to skill up, and I feel excited about it. Like we should feel excited about not knowing stuff. Like make that normal. Why do we feel like we only excited when we think that we know? The flex is saying, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn.
That's a sound bite right there. And I know we're getting close to time. It's just getting better and better and better as we go along. But I definitely want to give you a chance to plug anything that's coming up. First of all, I want to plug your book because I actually made a video about 5 books that I think everyone who's getting into tech and products should read. And yours was definitely one of it because I think it's one of the things that people probably think a little less about. And I think being very intentional about, how you build your careers, what kind of roles you target, just around those topics, I think is really great. So definitely check it out. I think is gonna be a great read. But I don't know if there's anything any last words, any things you want to plug.
No, I mean, I don't have anything specifically that I want to plug. You definitely can check out my book Career Rehab on Amazon.com. Even though I just said I don't have anything to plug. I just plugged the book, but yeah. The book's been out for a while, but if you're interested in revamping your personal brand and changing your mindset and thinking of yourself as a brand instead of an employee, I definitely think you would love this book. It's a great short read. Um, you can definitely follow me on social media platforms. I'm on all social media platforms at Kanika Tolver. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. So I host Twitter Spaces right now when I feel like it. I don't host them monthly anymore like I used to. But definitely feel free to connect with me. I do, offer one-on-one coaching if you're interested in that as well. Right now, I'll be offering that between now and the end of the year. And I'm super excited to, be speaking at a couple of conferences coming up in December. So I'll be at GovTechCon and I will be at Text Giving Summit.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much, Kanika. First of all, thank you so much for coming, but thanks so much for everything that you do within the community, helping to drive awareness, sharing your knowledge every single day, telling people about, all of these different things. It's so amazing that even today at work, somebody came to tell me about that impact. And I thought that that was just a beautiful, like,
Oh,
full
wow.
circle moment. So yeah, you're having an amazing impact and you're driving, along the things that I'm most passionate about. I see the opportunities in technology. It's changed my life. It's changed the life of so many people around me. And I definitely want to see it do the same for more and more people in the community. That's the show for tonight, everyone. It's Working in Tech. Kanika Tolver has been on fire tonight, dropping a lot of gems, relatable knowledge, things that, it's beyond the soundbite. It's beyond, all of the fancy things that you hear everywhere else. It's deep. And I hope that this has been helpful to you. Again, follow her everywhere on social media, Kanika Tolver. Check out the book. I think it's great. And we'll see you again, same time next week for another episode of the Working in Tech podcast. Have a good night.